Dear friends, the loss of a loved one is one of the most painful trials we face in life. The emptiness that remains after a beloved person's departure can sometimes seem insurmountable. We long for them, remember them, and keep photographs and personal belongings, trying to maintain some connection with those who are no longer by our side. But what if that connection actually never disappears? Many of us have noticed strange coincidences after the departure of loved ones. Sometimes these are small things: a song that suddenly plays on the radio on a meaningful day, an unexpected find that reminds us of the departed, or just a sudden feeling of the presence of someone who is no longer physically with us. Sometimes these signs are so evident that we freeze in amazement, unable to explain what is happening as a mere coincidence. Perhaps you have woken up in the middle of the night with a clear feeling that your departed spouse was just by your side. Or you have smelled your mother's favorite perfume, even though the bottle has long been put away in a distant drawer. Or maybe, in a difficult moment, you suddenly felt an inexplicable surge of strength and confidence, as if someone invisible was supporting you. Ancient cultures around the world believed that the souls of the departed remain close to us, protecting, guiding, and sometimes asking for help. These beliefs exist for a reason. Too many people around the world, independently of one another, tell similar stories about contacts with those who have left the earthly plane. Today, we will talk about how to recognize these subtle signals, how to understand that the soul of a departed loved one is indeed trying to connect with us. Perhaps they need our help in prayer, in finishing unfinished business, in forgiveness. Or maybe it is the soul of a loved one wanting to help us, suggesting a solution in a difficult situation, or simply comforting us in moments of loneliness and longing. This topic is personally close to me, and I know that many of you have gone through similar experiences. Let's try to understand these mysterious manifestations together and learn to hear those who, despite their physical absence, continue to love and care for us from another dimension. In modern culture, it is not common to openly talk about the connection with those who have passed to the other side. Many people, even after experiencing something unusual following the loss of a loved one, prefer to remain silent about it. They fear misunderstanding, worry that they will be considered too emotional, or even not entirely mentally healthy. People dismiss inexplicable phenomena as mere coincidences, figments of imagination, or the result of deep longing for the departed. Margaret from Boston, who's now 68 years old, shared her story. For a whole year after my husband died, I constantly felt his presence in the house. Sometimes I would wake up at night feeling as if he were sitting on his side of the bed. One day, on a particularly difficult day when I was crying in the kitchen, the phone suddenly rang, but there was no one on the line, just a faint noise, as if someone was breathing. And I just knew that it was Jack trying to comfort me. But I was afraid to tell even our children about it. I thought they would consider me crazy and say that I couldn't let go of the past. Margaret's story is not unique. Thousands of people experience similar feelings, but often keep them to themselves. The opportunity to share such experiences and be heard without judgment can bring immense relief. The difficulty also lies in distinguishing real signs from loved ones on the other side from one's own longing, imagination, or desire to believe that the connection is not broken. Where is the line between psychological self-soothing and genuine contact with the soul of the departed? It is important to understand that this is not about spirit sessions or attempts to artificially summon the spirit of the deceased. We are talking about a natural, spontaneous experience that comes by itself, often unexpectedly. About those moments when the boundary between worlds becomes thin and a person suddenly feels that their departed loved ones are still close. Before we move on to specific signs and manifestations, it is worth agreeing. This experience should be approached with an open heart, but also with common sense. There is no need to look for signs everywhere and anywhere, but one should not dismiss what truly seems unusual and significant. Physical manifestations of the presence of the soul of a deceased loved one can be diverse and sometimes very pronounced. Many people note unexplained temperature changes in certain places in the home. This can be a sudden cold draft in a closed room or, on the contrary, a feeling of warmth, as if an invisible person is standing nearby. Such temperature anomalies often occur in rooms that were particularly beloved by the departed or near objects that had special meaning for them. Strange sounds are another common sign. People talk about footsteps in an empty room, the creaking of a rocking chair in which no one is sitting, or even voices resembling that of the departed loved one. Such auditory phenomena often happen on significant dates, on the deceased's birthday, the anniversary of their death, or on holidays that were important to them in life. The movement of objects or their unusual behavior can also indicate the presence of a loved one's soul. Dorothy, 77 years old, from Chicago, recounted, "On the anniversary of my mother's death, I went into the kitchen and suddenly smelled her famous apple pie, even though no one in the house was cooking. The smell was so distinct that tears came to my eyes. And what's surprising, when I started to cry, the aroma intensified, as if my mom wanted to comfort me, reminding me of the happy times when we baked that pie together." Scents indeed play a special role in communicating with those who have passed away. It can be the fragrance of a favorite perfume, the smell of cigars that the father used to smoke, or even the aroma of a special dish that the departed loved to cook. These scents appear suddenly without an obvious reason and just as unexpectedly disappear. The sensation of a touch or the presence of someone is another physical sign. People describe a light touch on the shoulder or hand, the feeling that someone has sat next to them on the couch or bed. Sometimes this sense of presence is so strong that a person literally turns around, expecting to see their departed loved one. These physical manifestations occur particularly often when a person is in an emotionally vulnerable state, during moments of sadness, confusion, or when faced with an important decision. It is as if the soul of the loved one is trying to support, comfort, or guide in the right direction. Dreams and meditations often become a special channel of communication between worlds, through which the soul of the departed can convey their messages. In a state of sleep or deep meditation, a person's consciousness is more receptive to subtle energies, and the barriers that usually separate the world of the living from the realm of souls become permeable. Recurring dreams involving the departed loved one deserve special attention. These dreams typically stand out from mere memories in their vividness, realism, and emotional intensity. A person wakes up with a clear sense that they truly communicated with the departed, rather than just having dreamt about them. In such dreams, the deceased often appears healthy, happy, radiating light or tranquility. William, 72 years old, from San Diego, shared his experience. "A month after my wife's death, she began to come to me in dreams. At first, these were just joyful meetings. We would talk, and she would calm me. But in one of the dreams, she suddenly became very serious and persistently pointed to the attic of our house. She repeated this gesture over and over until I woke up. The next day, although it seemed foolish, I decided to check the attic. There, in a distant corner, I found a box with important documents that I had completely forgotten about, including the will and insurance, which were necessary to resolve numerous legal matters. Dreams like this, where specific information or warnings are conveyed, occur quite often. The soul of a loved one may indicate something important that remains unfinished or warn of danger. Meditation also opens a channel for contact. People who practice regular meditation report that in a state of deep relaxation, they suddenly felt the presence of a deceased loved one, received messages from them, or simply felt their love and support. Interestingly, after such dreams or meditative experiences, people often wake up or come out of meditation with a strong sense of message or presence. This feeling can last for hours, and sometimes even days, leaving a profound impression of the reality of the contact that occurred, rather than just a figment of imagination or a desire for that connection. Symbolic messages and so-called synchronicities are another way in which the souls of the deceased can communicate with their loved ones. Unlike direct physical manifestations or dreams, these signs are more subtle, but often align so closely with a person's emotional needs that it is hard to dismiss them as mere coincidence. The appearance of animals or insects that had a special significance for the departed is considered one of the classic ways for souls to communicate. Elizabeth from Phoenix shared a remarkable story. "My father loved bluebirds all his life. He had a whole collection of figurines and could watch them in nature for hours. After his death, I started noticing that during particularly tough moments, when I needed support, a bluebird would always appear nearby. Once, when I was crying on a bench in the park, Such a bird landed right in front of me and stayed until I calmed down. It was so unusual that I couldn't see it as anything other than a sign from my father. Recurring numbers or dates associated with a loved one can also be a form of contact. People share stories about how they keep encountering the same time on the anniversary of their wedding with a deceased spouse, seeing their birth date on license plates, or noticing other numerical coincidences that are too frequent to be random. Songs playing on the radio or television at significant moments, especially if those songs were important to the relationship with the departed, can also be a sign. Many people report that they turned on the radio and heard their song just at the moment they were thinking of their deceased loved one or needed support. Random encounters with people who remind them of the departed, or finding associated items in unexpected places. All of this can be a way for the soul to show its presence. Robert from Texas recalled how, a year after his wife's death, he found her favorite brooch, which he was sure had been buried with her. The brooch was lying on his pillow on their anniversary. Such symbolic signs often come in a series, one after another, reinforcing the belief that these are not just random coincidences. They can serve as comfort, guidance, or simply a reminder that the bond of love does not end with the death of the physical body. In addition to physical manifestations, dreams, and symbolic signs, there are also emotional and intuitive signals through which the soul of a deceased loved one can communicate with us. These signals can sometimes be even stronger than material manifestations, as they directly touch our inner world. A sudden, inexplicable feeling of the presence of a loved one arises in many people who have experienced loss. This sensation is difficult to describe in words, but it feels absolutely real, as if an invisible person is nearby. Sometimes this feeling is so strong that people begin to speak aloud, addressing the deceased, and feel that they are being heard and understood. The sensation of receiving advice or a hint in a difficult situation is another intuitive signal. Richard, 65 years old, from Miami, shared his experience. On the day of an important operation, I was alone in the hospital and very scared. The doctor spoke of high risks, and I didn't know whether to agree. Suddenly, I distinctly felt my deceased father's hand on my shoulder and heard, as if from within, his voice, "You will manage, son." The fear vanished instantly, and I made the decision. The operation was successful, and afterward, the surgeon said that if I had postponed it for another week, it would have been too late. An inner voice resembling that of the deceased often arises during critical moments of decision-making. This is not a hallucination in the medical sense, but rather an internal feeling, as if a loved one is guiding the correct path, using familiar phrases or intonations. Waves of unexplained emotions can also be a form of contact. People recount sudden surges of joy and peace without an apparent reason, especially at moments when they remember the deceased. Sometimes, on the contrary, unexpected anxiety arises, warning of danger or a wrong decision. A strong intuitive feeling that the soul of a loved one is trying to communicate something often arises before important life events. It can be a premonition that the deceased approves of or, on the contrary, is concerned about the upcoming event. Many people describe how they clearly felt the support of their departed parents at their children's weddings or during the birth of grandchildren. These emotional and intuitive signals are particularly significant when they come at a moment when a person is not actively thinking about the departed, meaning that they are not in a state of longing or reminiscing. This suddenness emphasizes their authenticity as real contact, and not just a projection of one's own desires and hopes. Recognizing signs from the soul of the departed loved one is just the first part of a special connection between worlds. The second, equally important part is understanding how to help the soul of the loved one if it asks for help. There are several proven ways that can bring peace to both the departed and those who remain. Creating a memorial space is one of the simplest and most effective ways to maintain a connection. This can be a corner in the home with a photo of the departed, their favorite items, and a candle. Such a space becomes a kind of portal for communication, a space where a person can freely talk to the departed loved one, share news, ask for advice, or simply be silent, feeling the invisible presence. Speaking aloud or mentally addressing the departed holds great power. Judith from Denver shared her story. After my sister died, I kept seeing her photo album, which we had put together in childhood, in my dreams. In those dreams, it was as if she was asking me for something but couldn't say it directly. When I finally found the album in the attic and showed it to her children, telling stories related to each photograph, the dream stopped. I realized she wanted her memory to be preserved for her children through those simple family stories. Fulfilling unspoken requests or promises made during life is often the key to the peace of the deceased soul. Some people feel that their loved ones cannot find complete peace due to unfinished business or unfulfilled promises. This can be anything from reconciling with another family member to visiting a place that was especially dear to the departed. Seeking support from a spiritual mentor or specialist can be helpful, especially if a person feels that the soul of their loved one is truly troubled by something. Different spiritual traditions offer various rituals and practices to help the departed souls, from prayers and memorial services to more complex rites. Praying for the soul of a loved one, according to the person's faith, is one of the most common and effective ways of providing assistance. Regardless of the specific religion, a sincere prayer coming from a pure heart is considered a powerful means of supporting the soul on its journey in other realms. Completing unfinished business that may have been left by the departed often brings relief to both parties. This can involve settling financial matters, fulfilling a last will, or even realizing a dream that the loved one did not get to pursue in life. The fact that loved ones have left the physical world does not mean that the connection with them is completely severed. The soul is capable of transcending the boundaries between worlds, especially when it comes to deep love and unresolved issues. Being open to signs from departed loved ones means continuing the relationship, even if in a different form. It is important to remember that, as in any relationship, the connection with the souls of the departed works in both directions. Sometimes we can help the soul of a loved one find peace through forgiveness, prayer, or fulfilling their last wishes. In other cases, they come to support us in difficult times, offer guidance, or simply let us know that we are not alone. In our world, which is oriented toward material values and tangible proof, it is easy to dismiss subtle signs and coincidences. But thousands of people around the world share similar stories of contacts with departed loved ones. These stories are too numerous and too similar to be entirely explained as mere flights of imagination. Belief in the possibility of such a connection does not contradict either science or most spiritual traditions. It provides comfort to the living and may help departed souls on their journey. Trust your heart and intuition. If you feel the presence of a loved one, perhaps they are indeed close by, supporting you and continuing to love you even from another dimension. We sincerely thank you for watching our video on how to understand that the soul of a departed loved one is asking for help. We hope this information has been useful to you and has brought some comfort if you are experiencing the loss of a dear person. If the topic of the video resonated with your heart, please support our channel. Subscribe, like, and share this video with those who may find it helpful. Your support helps us create more quality content on important topics that touch each of us. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss our new videos. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and remember, the bond of love does not break even after a person leaves the physical world.